Look at the hell that's been growing. The cry you cheat and you scheme, reaching for one of your limos. You struggle just paying that bill. You know you're high and you're mighty. The best of we all whittle down. With fortune and power and devious deeds, winners are chosen, you still won't concede. Final fight for what you believe. If it's anything, well, there's proof in the battlefield. You suck profits from all that I killed, but we gotta fade back. We're tired of messing around. We're tired of losing our feet on the ground. So tired we're taking you down and strip you away from that media crown. You know you'll keep selling us fear. Don't you forget that your ending is near. And you know, no matter what you say, your hopes is on display. We're a light in your darkest cave, and our power will go away. If what's right was on your mind, why's the truth so hard to find? Not be poor, but we're not blind. What you giving is second sight. Look at your tiny retraction. You've already gotten the view. Those methods that keep us divided. How else would you spread your fake news? Chilling your way through a story, or calling up scoops on the air. We pray for our youth, but why would you care? Searching for honor in all our despair. Rather be famous, pretend like you're there, and it's never fair. So we've leveled the playing field. You keep pushing till someone gets killed, but we've got a strength back. We're tired of messing around. We're tired of losing our men to the ground. We're tired of screaming out loud. We're tired of living our lives in the cloud. More and sell us for fear. Look how we bask in our enemies' tears. As we're told to shut up and let you play, with our hearts in a twisted cage, while your lives all stay the same, and we call you by your name. As your hopes is on the run, and your life is sinking sun, don't be sorry, just take the plunge, and let thy will be done. Sing, let thy will be done. Before the war is won, and when the war is won, only then the end will come.
All right, guys.
All right.
We'll
You know what?
get started.
Thank you first for Yellow Red Sparks for giving the blessing for us to play that before our broadcast tonight.
Yeah, it's a great song. You should buy it on iTunes.
You should also go see Hope's movie
Yeah,
by Mike
if
Cernovich.
you haven't already.
That would be a key to this whole broadcast tonight.
Yeah. Welcome, everyone, to the Ides of November, making the Ides great again. It was never supposed to be an ominous thing. It was a time of celebration, and so this one is titled Apocalypse. It's about a great revealing and unveiling, and a lot of people don't realize that apocalypse with ancient Greek meaning meant something different than what you
Totally
have envisioned.
different. And so we always think about apocalypse as just a terrible ending, a freaking destruction of the world. And apocalypse comes from a Greek word called apocalypsis. And although it's often used to describe as a great devastation or cataclysm, the literal meaning of apocalypse is unveiling, revealing. And we added awakening to it because that's what's happening over the last few years in America and actually across the world. And it comes, it goes into the book of Revelation. And some people will actually say that the four horsemen of the apocalypse should actually be called the four horsemen of Revelation, because that's what Revelation is about. And so we're about to explore this, and we're going to make, instead of making the Ides great again, or in addition to that, we're going to make apocalypse great again too, because it's awakening. We're waking up. And I tweeted out earlier today that you have to choose to be awake. You can't just sit back and watch TV and just be a drone and accept things as the way they are. You need to question.
Right.
And so we're going to go through some awakenings that have been happening in the last few years, and it's tied into, you cannot put your trust in a man. Right. And we've got Trumpy Bear behind us here, you can see. We're big fans of Trump, but Trump is a man, and you can't put your hope in a man. So right. MAGA is a great movement, but
you can't put your hope in man because man will always let you down.
Right. And so you can't put your hope in one man. Plus, constitutionally, the best scenario happens, 2024, he's out. So what happens then?
What then?
So some things have been happening for decades, and Trump's going to be here for maybe 5 more years. Yeah. So what then? So what are you going to do about it? And so first thing is you got to be aware, and you've got to choose awake. And this is where we go, and you're going to look at what we've seen over the last few years of the Trump presidency it's a miracle in a way, but it's just opened up. Trump didn't plan all this. It's not like he's a master planner, but he got elected and it blew up everything. And so here's where we are.
Yeah, and he's just one man. One man was never going to save us. He's not Jesus Christ. And so what happens when people learn things, in a great awakening, a great revealing, it's what you do. You can't just, there's a lot of people with a lot of knowledge that don't do anything with that knowledge. And that's where through our Periscope, we want to encourage people to get involved and be engaged, because that knowledge, you can be the wisest person in the world and know all of the corruption, to its core, but unless you actively do something to fight it, it doesn't matter. And so
a good point with that is that everybody looks to TV, it seems, to get their wisdom.
Yeah.
And I want to say that a lot of you guys out here in the world working and taking care of your families and just going to work every day, you're wiser than a lot of these guys up in these offices. And these guys in these hearings today, and these tenured people at state, they call Foggy Bottom, and ambassadors, and they have these great titles, but these guys aren't brilliant. And you guys out here in the world, you guys take care of business.
Right.
And you got to trust your judgment much better than you do.
Yeah. These they call them experts, elites, but they're only that it's a myth created in your mind. Plato said you can choose to not participate in the arena of ideas, but if you do, you will be governed by your inferiors, and that's what's happening. We're being governed by our inferiors, and that's where we have to step up. And before great change comes great revealing. And I don't know how long we've been going through this apocalypse, if it was the internet that ushered it in.
Remember, when we say apocalypse is not the end times.
Yeah, it's an unveiling.
No, man, it says in the Bible, we will never know.
Right.
It's not up to us to know. So that's not what we're focused on. Apocalypse is unveiling and revealing and knowing. So you choose to be awake. So start seeing this stuff.
Yeah. So I want to, in the news cycle that we have now, news moves so fast that yesterday's news is just old news, and there's so many things that have been revealed that that we forget. And even though, you know, love Trump or hate him, and maybe he hasn't done, you know, everything he wanted on immigration or whatever, but because of Trump, he's helped in this great, he's helped in this great revealing. And I just want to remind people that when he first came on the scene and he was running against 17 other Republicans, at that time, we did not know. At that time, they weren't never Trumpers. You know, they might have been secretly against him and talking, but
we're talking about people, conservatives, Republican Party type people, and this is where we get into the whole. They're when you get to the federal level, when you get to Washington D.C., it's a play, it's a stage. Washington D.C. is a stage, and so Republicans and Democrats, they're playing roles, and all the people that in the media in that stage, in New York and D.C., they're playing roles,
right, and
they're all getting paid.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, because of the internet and social media and Twitter, I can know that last night, I think it was last night, Brian Stelter referred to these impeachment hearings. He literally said, tomorrow begins episode 1.
Right.
And one of the Soledad O'Brien got mad at him and
they had a little Twitter fight,
called him out for it. She was only mad that he revealed what's going on, but he claimed it was because, well, we're in the age of TV and this is about, you know, attention span, but he called it episode 1. It's kind of like Netflix streaming when people look back on this, and he said episode 1 had to be entertaining, and the Democrats had to have a strong show, because as you know, when you tune in to watch a Netflix series, if you're not, you know,
you're not hooked.
Yeah, you don't come back.
Well, I'm gonna tell you today, a bunch of people were not hooked.
Oh my gosh, it was so.
We were only hooked because we were laughing about how terrible it was.
It was horrible. It was horrible. But so in the beginning, you know, with Trump, we didn't know all of the things we know about, you know, people that we once respected and bought their books and tuned into Fox News to listen to them spout their.
We went to see them speak. We went to see book signings, and you know, me and Yvonne did one some 2 decades ago with Newt Gingrich.
Yeah.
And even though Newt Gingrich he's like all in for Trump right now. You know, he's been spotty in his career too.
Yeah.
And these guys, they have their own thing going on.
And we wouldn't know that without social media and Twitter and all these tools at our fingertips. So, you know, Glenn Beck, David French, who defends Drag Queen Story Hour, you know, this.
You know what? A lot of people here don't know about Drag Queen Story Hour.
Okay.
I mean,
hey, Kathy.
I'm just gonna assume.
Kathy Oxer went to Tea Party meetings with me and stuff. Anyway.
So this is David French. If you don't know, is a conservative, one of the gatekeepers of conservative.
And he's considered an intellectual. I think
he's a conservative bro.
I think he's a lawyer, because I think that he was a lawyer for Ali when he was going through all this. The Speedway bomber was suing him. It's good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. So anyway, what was that? David French and Drag Queen Story Hour. So drag queens, the American Library Association is pushing and promoting drag queens reading to our young children at libraries.
Yeah. And
David French is all for it. He thinks it's a sign of, you know, it's a good sign for the liberty, you know, for our liberty that we can have, even though we disagree with it. And he was.
Now we can have drag queens, that some of them who have pedophile records can read to children in public libraries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had like 2. We've had like.
And this is the guy who is a conservative he would vote for Mitt Romney, but if it was Trump and Hillary, he'll vote for Hillary.
But anyway, so he thinks there's nothing wrong with Drag Queen Story Hours, and he was part of the conservative intellectual movement that can't even protect our children from predators who want to read to them in the library. And without Trump, we wouldn't have seen the contrast between, you know, and nobody thought of Trump as like
this is the thing with Trump, is he gets elected because he was never supposed to happen. When was it happen? I'll tell you honestly.
This is true. Transgenderism is the Baphomet spirit.
Yeah.
So true.
So when we're going through the primaries in 2016, I said to my brother, I'm like, I want him to go there and blow that stuff up. I'm sick of there's no fighting back on the Republican side, on the conservative side.
Yeah, it didn't matter who you got.
It didn't matter who you got. Everything happened the same. You look at John McCain and stuff. But Trump's election, it's not about Trump.
Right.
He's the catalyst.
It's actually more about us.
It's more about what do we do with it. And Trump's elected, and then all of a sudden we see, wait a minute, he's appointing judges that the Heritage Foundation liked.
Right.
He's doing things that conservative commentators, the so-called Heritage Foundation, everybody have always asked for.
Right.
With conservative leaders.
And actually, conservative leaders said that George Bush promised to move the embassy to Jerusalem.
Well, even Obama did that.
Yeah,
Obama
that's true.
did that.
But you had all these promises from these conservatives, but Trump gets in.
No matter what happens,
and
Trump does it, and it's bad. So other presidents said we got to do it. Trump does it, it's bad. So something's going on here. So you've got Republicans, Democrats on both sides are against the same guy.
Right.
That when I see bipartisanship in Washington D.C., I'm like, what the hell are we in for? Something's going to happen. Something bad's going to happen.
Right. When they start talking bipartisanship, and it's funny how like on things that we want to get done, like immigration, it takes literally forever, and it's still not done. But when they want to do something, that both parties agree on, it's amazing how fast they can work. But that's something also that the internet, social media, it has been able to reveal to us. We wouldn't have been able to see this 15 years ago, and I think that's part of the problem that mainstream media and a lot of our elites are struggling with right now. And I think they're hoping to put that cat back in the bag or the toothpaste back in the bottle, and it's not going to happen. But people forget we didn't know all this stuff about all these never Trumpers who we thought we looked up to.
And that's what I was going to say earlier, is that when Don Jr. was talking the other day about, he was talking to his dad right before he went down the escalator to announce his presidency. And his dad turned to him and said, now we see who our real friends are.
Right.
Because all these same people who are, Trump's a racist, a misogynist, all these things, as soon as he went down the escalator, as a Republican,
everything
he's a
changed.
Racist, a homophobe, misogynist. He's
and that's
all
another
these bad
thing
things.
that's been revealed to us, because we can go back and show people where Snoop Dogg, where Joy Behar, where all these Ellen, where they praised Trump. They had him on their show and they loved him, and we would have never seen that. So this great revealing.
And that's the thing is that us as just regular voters out here in America, we were always just being castigated as these racist people.
Right.
And we're like, what?
Right.
And then you see the change. Nobody ever called him that.
Right.
He was very well known.
Well, like Andrew Breitbart says, that you're going to call me racist. You've seen that.
It's feeding time. We're feeding the snake tonight.
Oh yay.
Marvin's getting fed.
So through this great revealing,
Trump.
Yeah. Lots of rap songs about Trump.
Oh yeah.
Positive.
In a positive way.
Right. So I lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
You're right about that.
It is about it's about godly versus, and that's true. And I think
we're in a spiritual war.
It's not.
And that's why you got to get out of this paradigm of red and blue, GOP, Democrat, because a lot of these guys are on the same page. And I'll tell you, I say this over and over again to Yvonne. I think I've said it to Scott before, is that the only true bipartisanship in Washington, D.C. is the retention of power and protection of pedophiles. And we're going to get into the pedophile thing later, but me and Yvonne were just on open source. We don't have security clearances, and we can find things. And from other people on Twitter who are doing great, diligent work, who find, they post their information, where they get it from.
It gets shared.
There is so much. Everything is seems to be tied into pedophilia and the breaking of children, and it's like the control that's happening there. It's bigger than Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Epstein.
He was a tool.
And you know what? We don't think he killed himself.
Hmm.
We don't even know if he's
Who knows?
We don't even know if he's dead.
Yeah.
We do know that he's not the major part of it. He's a tip. He was a sacrificial lamb.
Right, and I do know that because of this great revealing, this apocalypse-like thing that's happening, we're able to see this. We're able to read the depositions that happened back in 2008, where he was offered this sweet plea deal, and a lot of people want to say, well, they didn't know what we know now. Actually, they did know. They knew a lot more than they let on, and we can know that now because of these resources that we have. Which brings me to, Podesta Leaks. If you were, I don't think you were active on Twitter back then, but Podesta Leaks was like, oh my gosh, it was so much fun because every Tuesday or Wednesday, John Podesta would, children are sacred. John Podesta would, not John Podesta, Julian Assange would release another batch of emails, just thousands upon thousands, and we would go through them. And
a real quick point, Yvonne's going to talk about Wikileaks emails. This is leading up to the election in 2016. But these emails revealed so much about the Clinton camp.
It's a treasure trove, and then mainstream media has never talked about the contents of
what happened with this is they derided how the leaks happened, and they went off about how people found out about it. They went off on Julian Assange, but nobody to this day has ever refuted anything in the emails.
Not only do they not refute them, they don't touch the content. They don't talk about them at all. Just in a broad sense.
And actually, Cuomo, what did he say on CNN?
Cuomo said that
little Fredo.
Yeah, Fredo said that only he could read you the WikiLeaks.
Don't you guys go reading those emails.
We would get in trouble. He was trying to instill the fear that we would get arrested, like there was something illegal
because
about
we've got Fourth Amendment, but you don't.
Well, we were able to laugh him. I mean,
right.
That was the funniest
thing. So of course everybody read them and digested and researched.
Yeah, they just made them the Streisand effect. It made them want to look at them even more. But the contents of those emails, and through the contents of those emails, satanic ritual abuse is a multi-generational, multi-family. Yes, it is. And see, that's the problem.
And I think, it sounds, and here's where we get into apocalypse. And apocalypse being a good thing, it's an awakening. So she's talked about being satanic and ritualistic things. You gotta throw the CIA in there.
Yeah, and we learned that through the finders, which I'll get to in a minute. But the contents of the Podesta Leaks, besides revealing a lot of the suspicions that we had on pedo rings, it also revealed to us that our mainstream media was in bed with the DNC, or maybe just Uniparty as a whole, and they were colluding. People like Jake Tapper, Maggie Haberman, Chuck Todd. It's amazing to me that they never talked about the contents of those emails, because then you'd have to discredit those people that were revealed. And those aren't the only three. There were more.
And those are three of the most outraged.
Prominent.
Yeah,
Glenn Thrush. Glenn Thrush.
Yeah.
Oh, remind me, Dan. It was something about Glenn Thrush. Oh, I'm a hack. And he said, literally, don't let this get out, and everybody will know I'm a hack, or something like that. New York Times, yeah. So all these people colluding, and so it was also through those emails that we learned that the DNC was colluding with the MSM to rig the primary for Hillary. Debbie Wasserman Schultz, people don't remember this. Debbie Wasserman Schultz was the head of the DNC. She was in charge of rigging that, and she was removed the day of their convention. Their convention starts, and Debbie Wasserman Schultz is still in. This scandal is broken. Everybody knows. The Bernie bros are all mad, but they think they're just going to continue as normal. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz goes on the floor of the DNC to do her, stuff that she does, and there was a revolt. The crowd was like, that you couldn't hear Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She had to leave the stage, and it was shortly after that they removed her and 4 upper level, DNC people. So they were going to try to just smooth it over, and Broward County is definitely the heart of the beast. I agree. But anyway, but a lot of people forget. It just baffles my mind when you see people talking to Hillary Clinton like she's like this legitimate political figure, when we know that the debate questions were given to Donna Brazile. Yeah. The Debbie Wasserman Schultz was trying to help her, rig the primary for her.
And now Donna Brazile works for Fox.
And they cheated all of their Bernie bros out of their voice.
And now the same Bernie bros are still on the same side. And here's the thing, is when you
they don't. There's,
some of them
there's turmoil. There's a lot of Bernie bros.
But there's a lot. I see a lot of Bernie people on Twitter that
you're
are
right.
they're just
but
they're latching on the
torn.
next one. And I'm like, guys, you've got to choose to be awake.
Right.
And I know it's hard because it's been hard for us on some things because there's a lot of things, and we're not going to get into some stuff tonight that me and Yvonne would love to talk about.
Yeah. Maybe
we
one
know
day.
we've been lied to about for decades.
Maybe one day.
So,
but through this great revealing, we would have never known that the whole DNC primary was rigged. So we know that Donna Brazile from CNN gave the debate questions to Hillary early. And so the thing that people need to be asking is the DNC going to... No, I know this to be true. The DNC, how long have they been doing that? Are they going to do it this time?
it's been doing it.
How many campaign or
You know what? We need
primaries
leaks,
have
we
been
need leaks
rigged?
from the GOP primary.
It's funny that the GOP is strangely quiet on that, because the only people that you ever see bringing up the fact that the DNC was rigged, it's people like us. You don't hear our elected officials talking about it, or even the people that we really love. It's like, I would love to see when Hillary Clinton tweets, I'd like to see all of our elected representatives and go, wasn't the DNC primary rigged for you?
And I've got Trent Kelly here down in Mississippi, and I'm not impressed.
Yeah, I've got David Kustoff here, and which I guess he does mostly.
We went to high school with David Kustoff.
I know.
He wouldn't remember us probably.
He was a year older than me, and he was a nice guy. He was always nice to me.
You know what? He's probably still a nice guy right now.
But we don't need nice guys. We need
nice
fighters. We need soldiers. So moving on to the next thing. So through the Wikileaks, we learned how fake the news really is. That was really the beginning of understanding. We'd always thought and cursed, Anderson Cooper, Chris Matthews on the TV, but we really didn't have any ironclad, evidence that it's all manipulated. WikiLeaks and Julian Assange revealed that. And guess what? Guess who's sitting in jail? The only person sitting in jail, not swamp creatures, not people part of Spygate, but the person that revealed all of that to be true.
And Anderson Cooper, I still want to know where he gets his name from, because he's a Vanderbilt.
Well, his dad was not. It was a different dad than the Vanderbilt. But it's funny. He doesn't tell that side of him that he came from money, serious money.
Serious,
also,
generational.
And then when he also began his career, he did a year at the CIA. A lot of people don't know that.
There's the CIA again.
Mockingbird, I know Kathy Oxer, if she's still here, knows.
Ultra.
I'm sure Dan knows about Mockingbird Media, but they held hearings on Mockingbird Media. It was an operation.
Washington Post and New York Times basically are.
They had. There was a big deal because somebody had found out that the CIA had planted journalists into the mainstream media, and
with the CEO's help.
You can Google it. There were hearings in Congress. I watched the hearings. It was in the 70s. And personally, I think that there were way more than, I think it was, it was few. It wasn't a whole bunch of them. Personally, I think it's more in the hundreds. And
it doesn't matter how many now, because now it's 6 media companies own all the outlets in America.
That's why when you see people, from time to time, you'll see people tweet at mainstream media and they'll say, oh, okay, Mockingbird Media. And that's what they're talking about. Maggie Haberman's children have overseas trust funds. Payoffs. Okay, I didn't know that. I didn't know she had children. Is she married? I didn't know that. But Maggie Haberman in Podesta Leaks was somebody from the Hillary Clinton campaign was writing somebody else saying, hey, let's get Maggie Haberman. She's never let us down, and she will always tee up a good story for us. She works for the New York Times.
And take New York Times with what's his name from Russia with the whole Holodomor, the whole Ukraine starvation.
What was the guy's name that got the Pulitzer?
He got a Pulitzer at New York Times.
Oh, what's his name? I can't think of his name. I know Kathy would know this one too. His name slips my. Yeah, he covered up genocide. No biggie. So it's kind of like
way before genocide was a term.
The Ukrainian genocide. Yeah, in Ukraine. All roads.
Yeah.
We keep saying we did our
Now we're back
last
to
video was
Ukraine.
all roads lead to Rome, but I think maybe they all lead to Ukraine. Ukraine's not too far
No.
from Rome. But anyway, so we wouldn't know about the fake news. Walter Duranty, yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Dan. Walter Duranty won a Pulitzer Prize, and to this day, it has not been. Why didn't it ever get pulled when they found out that it was?
When they found out he was lying and covering up for the Soviet Union.
Yeah, it would be like, I'm sure that they didn't show him like the starvation, but he's a smart guy. If I go over to North Korea and Kim Jong-un shows me, I know that he's not going to go show me the worst. As a journalist,
there's got to be curtains that he like.
Yeah, he
caught
owns the New York
glimpses.
Times, right? Carlos Slim, that's true. I forget that. So anyway, through this great revealing, it's kind of huge. People take it for granted now that we just accept that we know that the news is fake. But we never knew how fake it was until the last few years, and thanks to Julian Assange. And I know that Julian Assange is not perfect, and a lot of people do not like him. But I mean, look at Seth Rich. Seth Rich worked for the DNC in IT, leaked email. He's the one that people think leaked all the emails, that it wasn't a hack.
Because actually, on that, because Russ talked about it too, but somebody has done a study on how on the download speeds that occurred,
Right.
that had to happen, and it could not have been a leak over the internet. It had to be to a thumb drive.
I saw Scott Adams talking about that and how it was debunked, which he thinks.
Well, he thinks global warming's real too.
Yeah.
And he's got some good stuff.
But Seth Rich was murdered, and he was right there. He was
DC police claimed this a robbery, but his phone and his wallet were still on him.
And like Epstein, all the video that would show what happened, and strangely, we don't have it. So Julian Assange, for everything that you might not like about him, nothing that he's ever reported or released has ever been refuted or proven wrong, and nobody's ever sued him. But he's the only one sitting in jail, and he's been
him being in prison,
and
he's in prison in England right now.
Yeah,
he's in Balmoral prison. So if he's done all these egregious things that are untrue, and he's in prison right now, and people are trying to get him to the United States, why is he not being sued? I mean, he's a ripe target. He's sitting right there.
Right.
He has no defenses. He has no contact.
He claims that he knows who was, not the hack, but who gave him the files that had to do with Hillary's hack, which have to go back to the Robert Mueller investigation. Strangely enough, they never wanted to talk to Mueller, and I know people talk about extraditing him here, and I really don't want to extradite him here because I think he'll be Epsteined.
Yeah.
So.
Because think about it. Take Epstein real quick. We've got Epstein, biggest billionaire pedophile. So when he's arrested a few months ago, we didn't expect that.
No.
Nobody expected that.
Thanks
so all of a sudden,
Mike Cernovich got that ball rolling.
So he's arrested at a New York airport flying in. So somebody's tweeted about how this guy has contacts, he has everything. He didn't know he was going to be arrested. He gets grabbed. And a month later, he's dead. But in that time, a bunch of us on Twitter started saying, you know what? I don't think Epstein's going to make it to trial. He's going to be died or something.
And then the left pounces on us.
And then they pounce and said, oh, the conspiracy theories are saying that Epstein will not make it to trial.
Right.
Well, what do you know? He didn't make it to trial.
Man, that's
he killed himself. A man.
Maybe.
It's a series of unfortunate events.
And he's got a short bunk bed and supposedly sheets that are almost like paper because he's in a certain area of the prison.
Right.
That's very secure. 2 cameras fail. The guards are gone.
No, the guards fall asleep. 2 of them. No, and actually, do you remember that one of the guards was not actually a guard, and they never actually say what he was, but I'm guessing he was intelligence of some sort.
Oh, Mueller was in the prison. I mean, if we're going to do conspiracy,
yeah.
And
might as well.
We like to call them conspiracy queries.
Yeah.
Not conspiracy theories.
Yeah, we're asking
questions because these are valid questions. And actually there was a guy, not the coroner, but one of the guys at the Bureau of Prisons, in all my time in this prison system, I've never seen two cameras fail at the same time watching the same sale.
Right.
Ever.
It's
Ever.
mighty convenient for whoever helped him or assisted him with
Meanwhile,
his suicide.
Trump talked to a guy in Ukraine
about
his
about investigating a corrupt company, Burisma, which Ukraine is like, I don't know if people even know this, but Ukraine, like if you were going to have a list of like all the corrupt countries on the world, they're going to be in the top 3.
Yeah.
And they've been corrupt like that forever.
They play all sides.
So,
Ukraine has had to do that for generations.
They've had like 3 revolutions.
They're in between Russia and Europe.
And they've had like 3 revolutions in the
Asia.
last 30 years. And Soros, I think, is behind all of those. I mean, can't prove that, but I can say that. I mean, at least I'm not ABC News talking about Syrian war footage that comes from Kentucky. I mean, at least I'm not doing that. But
we need to talk more about that.
We're going to get to that stuff.
Yeah. So, and then that brings me to Mark Dutroux. I know a lot of you that watch this regularly, you saw our video on Mark Dutroux.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. You know what? Every ethnicity is capable of evil.
Doesn't matter.
But anyway, Mark Dutroux, we did a video on him a few months ago, and when we first started investigating him, we had never heard of the White March. It was called the White March. So Mark Dutroux was an Epstein-like pedophile, except that Mark Dutroux murdered children, but he fed a pedo ring too, much like Epstein did, where elites were. Yeah. That was never proven, and they shut it down at Mark Dutroux. Conveniently.
Well, the way they did it, the judge that was actually investigating, there was one, because in Belgium it's kind of different because the judges are actually the investigators as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so the judge was able to actually free two girls got freed because of his work. But then the upper people in Belgium came in and removed
the judge. Yeah.
Because he was getting to the bottom of it and removed him.
Right.
And there were cops on that case who were like, what are they doing?
Yeah, and the whole reason the country had this White March, which is a march it was like people
Capitol,
in the streets, they were angry because these girls had been turning up missing for years. It had become the norm, and the people were just so angry because nothing was being done. And after I think 2 girls that wound up dead,
I had that queued up too.
They had this White March. So in a country that has, I think, a population of
like 11 million people,
there was
the equivalent in the U.S. would have been like 15 million people hitting D.C.
Right.
Pissed off that they were not investigating.
And shutting everything down. You had firemen in the streets taking their hoses and hosing down City Hall because it's so dirty, and it was a big deal. And if you pull it up on Google,
and here's the thing, here's a big deal with media. When you want to try to wake up, when you're watching news, what are they not covering? And if the only way you find out what they're not covering is you go find out yourself.
Right.
And so me and Yvonne have been in touch. We've been political for all our lives. We have never heard of this story until a year ago.
Yeah, and Wall Street Journal had a write-up about it. There was like mainstream media people that had written about it. We had never seen it.
No, and Wall Street Journal, I had delivered my door every morning.
Yeah.
Until about 15 years ago.
CNN was around there. There's no CNN footage of this.
No.
But anyway, you can Google it.
But you can see footage.
And
White March,
Belgium.
Brussels, Belgium.
And they celebrate it every year. They memorialize that. They recognize it. It was a big deal. And
Mark Dutroux is still in prison.
Yeah.
But his wife. She got out like 10 years ago.
Yeah, his wife helped him. She was supposed to feed 2 of the girls. You know, Mark Dutroux had a dungeon where he kept these girls, and his wife was supposed to feed them when he was in jail for some other unrelated offense.
For something else unrelated.
And she didn't feed them. She fed the dogs because she was afraid to go into the dungeon because she was afraid they would attack her, these 8-year-olds.
So she let them starve to death.
They starved to death, supposedly.
In his dungeon.
And anyway, she served about 12 years and she's out. Yes. And then he had another co-conspirator who I can't remember his name, but just like a month ago, they released him on the condition within 6 months that he finds like somewhere to live, that someone takes him in. And as of now, I haven't seen that anybody has volunteered to. But you know, they volunteered to take her in. I suppose somebody's going to jump up, and they're trying to get it where they let Mark.
But it just seems like, you know, back in 92 or so, 5 million people march on the capital of Belgium.
You would think it'd be a big deal.
I've never heard of it.
Why didn't that make sense?
And I was in touch. I was even in the 80s. I was in touch with news.
Right.
I would have seen it.
Well, back then, supposedly, is when we thought CNN was actually doing real news.
I don't think they were around then.
Well, they were around in the early 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because Fox started around 96 or 97. And CNN had been around, I think, since the late 80s, early 90s, I think. But, so I'm thinking they were never real news. But that's kind of a big deal. The Mark Dutroux in Belgium, Brussels, Belgium, which is where UNICEF headquarters are. And UNICEF, which is, you know, it's the child foundation of the United Nations, they had a big scandal in the late 80s where they were filming child porn in the basement, in the headquarters in Brussels, Belgium of UNICEF. You can Google this, you know, research it yourself. That's UNICEF. UNICEF just recently, if you Google this, child porn, somebody was just recently busted. And, you know, that's another thing through this great revealing is we've seen that these child charities, you know, Hillary Clinton Foundation, the Sandusky, all of these, we would not know that if we didn't have this instant access to.
And the thing, if it's international and it says some type of child help, it's not.
Question it. You know, because we've got the Representative David Farnsworth. I'm getting totally off topic, but on the Child Protection Services, a lot of people don't realize that Child Protection CPS is a big conduit for sex trafficking children. And if you remember, if Kathy and Dan are still out there, if you remember, a few months ago, there was a representative in Arkansas and there was a representative in, I think, Kentucky.
No, Oklahoma.
They're just state representatives.
Kentucky's a different story.
And they were investigating CPS type stuff like this.
They were state senators and they're dead.
And they were murdered. All out murdered. And so now there's an Arizona congressman, state representative, David Farnsworth, and he has stated, you know, clearly that he thinks they were murdered because they were investigating Child Protective Services and child sex trafficking. And this is in relation to the Arizona, what's his name? He was a county clerk who was just recently busted for running a baby mill out of the Marshall Islands.
And he's tied to Mitt Romney.
He was selling babies like for $40,000, and like that's all connected. And
here's where you get into the whole. There's no blue or red.
No,
because this guy's tied to Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney's a sacrosanct, you know, selfish tool that thinks he's going to talk about how bad Trump is.
Open it. It's just hot. Same thing with like, you know, this is not a red or blue thing. Denny Hastert was
Speaker of the House for the Republicans.
He was, you know, the third heartbeat from the presidency, and there's more to that story that it doesn't get investigated for obvious reasons.
Get out of your boxes.
Yeah, this is not about right or left or red or blue.
This is about good or evil.
It's on both sides. And, you know, a lot of people only talk about the Jeffrey Epstein thing because they think they can link Trump to it. And if anybody can ever present proof that Trump did something like that, please reveal it, and I will condemn it. But let's reveal it all, no matter who it hurts. But, you know, I'm going to veer off on something different. So anyway, great revealing and unveiling things that we wouldn't know. The Finders. That was like a couple weeks ago.
Find the Finders.
Who will find what the Finders are?
We get a drop on Twitter 2 weeks ago. It's from FBI.gov.
It's Twitter. FBI Vault. It's on Twitter.
The Vault. And there's this cult that's tied to CIA. Mind you, this came from the FBI.
It came from the FBI.
We still to this day, nobody can figure out where this came from, why it dropped all of a sudden.
Right.
And there's somebody calls Tallahassee, Florida Police Department in the middle of one afternoon from a park because there's these guys in suits with these kids in the park, like 4 or 5 kids.
It was 6 kids.
Who are disheveled.
6 kids and 2 men who are not their father.
Yeah. And they give these terrible stories, so go into it.
Yeah. So, and the interesting thing about this is we don't know why this was dropped. And within these finders documents, there's also documents about the McMartin daycare, which, if you're really into this stuff,
hysteria.
You know it was the 80s satanic panic. It was the daycare that began the satanic panic. And Ted Gunderson, ex-FBI agent, had gone on a crusade before his death, that there were underground tunnels and satanic ritual worship, and everybody mocked him and called him a tinfoil hat. But anyway, within these FBI documents were description of those underground tunnels and the measurements of them, and I still haven't figured out why were those documents within the finders documents. It doesn't make sense to me. But the great thing about like this great revealing is, if this had been 20 years ago and those documents had been released, somebody that went and who was into finding out stuff like this would have gone, would have found out about it, would have written about it. Nobody would have heard or known.
Because it can't spread.
But so you have all these different researchers like us who, the mainstream media will just brush us off and call us tinfoil hats, but it really doesn't matter because nobody's watching them anymore. But the finders, that phone call from Tallahassee, which if you do your research, you figure out that the whole reason that phone call was made in Tallahassee and why they were there, because this pedo ring or whatever it was linked to DC and some farm in Virginia.
And
so why were they in Tallahassee? Well, if you dig deep enough, you find that there was a investigator from, I think he was from DC, who had called the Tallahassee investigator and said, look, I think these cases are related, because he had a call 2 months earlier in December regarding some incident at the farm in Virginia.
Yeah.
That's connected to DC. I know this is convoluted. But anyway, he had started this investigation, and so the finders had been tipped off then in December that somebody was onto them. So they'd sent these kids, or whatever kids they had, on the road in this van, because when this phone call was made in Tallahassee, the kids were hungry and starving. They'd been living out of the van, and it would make sense if they were on the run.
Yeah.
And so the police asked them where they were going. They say they're going to they're taken into some
Mexico.
smart school in Mexico. It's a rabbit hole that it's deep.
Another big part of it is because it got into DC, they got the Capitol Police involved.
Yeah.
Because there was stuff going on up there.
Oh, and they already knew about the finders.
They did, and then they knew about they were traveling to North Korea, Vietnam, and Russia during the 50s and 60s.
Right, when
while we were at war,
at the height of the Cold War.
And then the State Department came in and said, "There's nothing to see here.
We looked at it; it's all legitimate.
Everything's good."
While
we
we
were at war,
right? So you have to ask
these are
yourself,
not the droids you're looking for.
Yeah.
So how you read it was really interesting reading, and at the end, of course, the fox who's guarding the hen house has decided that there's nothing going on suspicious, everything's cool, there's no satanic ritual worship. As a matter of fact, on the guy from DC that had been investigating the farm in Virginia, he had talked to witnesses that lived around the farm and said that children would often arrive in the middle of the night crying, and there were cages where they kept the children, which was weird, because at the end of the investigation, the FBI and the State Department, they all say, no, there's nothing to see here. They were just some hippies living kind of an alternative lifestyle. Well, cages for children doesn't seem like something that should be.
And we're all so concerned about cages and children right now.
Oh, yeah.
But not then.
Not then.
Or everything pre-Trump is off limits.
Right. So we would have never known about the finders, and for whatever reason, somebody at the FBI decided
And you know what?
to
Check
drop
out
those.
check out Jamie Deluxe.
JAMIEDELUX, and he does short
On YouTube.
videos.
They're like 15 minutes.
And he may not be your cup of tea. He does cuss.
But he shows you some stuff.
But all of the stuff that he shows you is it's always backed up by mainstream media reports or documents from the government. And so he's a great researcher. Got a lot of information from him. So through this great revealing and this apocalypse, those are things that we've been able to find out. We would have never known about the Spygate members, how deep,
how widespread it is.
you know, you think about John Brennan and James Clapper. If you didn't have at your fingertips this ability to pull up when James Clapper on the floor of Congress lies about spying on citizens, and then Edward Snowden releases those documents, kind of like the way Julian Assange did, about how the NSA absolutely spies on Americans. And then he comes back on the Congress and apologizes.
Yeah.
Oh, did I say we didn't spy? Oh, oops, my bad.
No, they lied to Congress.
And got away with it.
And so other people that lied to the FBI are in prison right now.
Right.
But these former officials, and you know what the big deal was a few months ago, was when Trump pulled their security clearances away.
Oh, yeah.
So you can lie to Congress.
I'm asking, why do they still have their security clearances when they're gone and not in the role?
And that's just the usual
But
stuff.
anyway, that's
business as usual.
John Brennan lied on the floor of Congress about spying on the Senate.
He lied to the Senate.
About spying on members of the Senate Intel Committee,
Yeah.
Dianne Feinstein. And then he says, no, we weren't spying. And then when they got the documents to prove that he comes back and he says,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Oops. It reminds me of Urkel. Oops, did I do that?
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't. There's so much information that we wouldn't know, and before anything can change, you have to know. You wouldn't know that Professor Mifsud, who was supposedly a Russian agent that was working with George Papadopoulos, you wouldn't know that actually Mifsud was a Western intelligence. He worked
for decades.
He worked at a school in Italy called Link that was like a spy school
training ground
for the CIA.
Yeah.
And that dude disappears. If you remember, for a while in 2017, he falls off the grid, and everybody thinks maybe he's been Epstein.
Yeah.
It turns out he went into hiding, probably because he's smarter than these dumb state people.
He's definitely not tweeting.
No, but he's come on the grid lately because apparently the Italian authorities got him for something.
Yeah, they found him. I need to play that. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, Italy elected a new president who is pro-Trump, and so like all of this stuff that's happening is being revealed now, which this is all unveiling. Like all of this information, it's almost too much for us to be able to process and appreciate.
Right.
There's so much, and I wish people could be more grateful and say, okay, we know, we can see this corruption, but we can't do anything about it. And people are like, we live in this fast food nation where we want this I want my stuff now.
But it seems like lately we've gotten the information we want.
But the actions don't happen. Actions, as far as like law enforcement and legal proceedings, those don't happen quick ever unless everybody's on the same page and corrupt.
Right.
And just want to make something happen. So people have to be patient. So I'm not one of these people, that trust Sessions, trust the plan type people, but I'm also not one of these people that thinks, oh, well, this has not happened fast enough, so it's just not going to happen at all. We're in the middle of this paradigm shift with all this information of corruption, and if you think it's too much for us to wrap our brains around, how do you think it is for the people that are actually in places where you have an ability to do something about it? It's not going to happen in an instant. So I'm still hopeful. I know that Barr actually was in Memphis. I don't know if you know this today.
I didn't know that.
He was Attorney Barr was in Memphis today, and he said that the IG report was going to be released soon.
Oh, that he do that from here. 'Cause
Yeah.
I saw the comments.
I don't know what he was here for. I wish I'd known. But anyway, I think things don't happen fast enough for people because like we can get online and we're like we can't even hold our attention for an article that lasts more than 10 seconds. So
Yeah.
we kind of
Sometimes you got to dig in, and you got to lose other things in your life and listen to this.
right. Maybe we could turn that off and then it wouldn't be so hot.
Yeah.
So Mifsud is not a Russian agent. He's a Western agent, so that opens up a whole other thing. If he's not a Russian agent, and he's a Western agent, well, who hired him? And I'm guessing John Brennan or our own government.
It'd be John Brennan.
And then without all these resources at our fingertips, we wouldn't have been able to see impeachment today. Episode 1, as Brian Stelter would call it.
Brian Stelter wanted to be so gripping and riveting.
Did you guys get to watch episode 1 of impeachment
today? Did you guys
today?
Get to see that stuff today?
Oh my gosh, it was so Lou and I are very
We're in
tapped
tune to this stuff, and I took a nap.
It's interesting, and I tuned out because what's his name? Ambassador Taylor had the most monotonous, droning voice, and then he's talking.
He pointed his finger a lot.
He pointed his finger a lot.
Sleepy time.
But anyway, it was very boring. So impeachment is kind of like Robert Mueller 2.0. Before Robert Mueller testified, and if you remember before the Robert Mueller report came out, there was all of this hype that, the Mueller report, Mueller on Twitter, there was hashtag Mueller time, like Miller time. Mueller time was going to take down Trump. And when that report comes out, it's all over and Trump is finished. And, that was the hype. And then the report comes out and we get to read it.
Stu's time.
Yeah, we get to read it and there's nothing there. There's no collusion. The big thing was there's no collusion, no obstruction. And then the Democrats are like, oh my, they're let down. All their voters are let down, and they're like, oh my, we've got to have Mueller come testify. And when Robert Mueller released his report, he was like, he told people that he was not, this was it, that he was going to talk about this then, and that was going to be the end of it, and he didn't want to be questioned on any of it. But then their voters were in such, revolt that the Democrats had to do something. So they brought Mueller in. Mueller absolutely did not want to be there. So he's in Congress, and the myth of Mueller was unveiled. Everybody had told us, from Republicans to Democrats to mainstream media people, that, Mueller was this nonpartisan, non-biased statesman. He was intellectual. He was smart. Everybody respected him. And that, oh my goodness, I'll never forget it. I was like, it was worse than I had ever. I was like, that's the guy?
Mueller. And remember, he's supposedly, they actually wouldn't say nonpartisan. They would say lifelong Republican.
Lifelong Republican. Speaking of lifelong,
you know who found Mueller and Comey in the Justice Department?
Yeah. Does anybody out there?
Found them?
Does anybody out there?
You know who? Somebody high up in the Justice Department said, "This
Hey,
Mueller and this Comey
and
guys."
They said it to Bill Clinton. They said,
They're
"Hey,
good.
Bill Clinton, these guys. You need to look at these guys. Does anybody out there know who referred?"
Somebody high up at the Justice Department said, "These two guys, they're going somewhere."
Yeah.
Anybody know?
Come on. Somebody on
I
Facebook?
figure Kathy or Dan might know.
Somebody recently in the Justice Department, before Trump, found Comey and Mueller and said, "These guys are going places. I'm going to move them up."
What do you know?
If you
30,000
well, let's just say
emails.
that he will be forever associated with Fast and Furious. He will forever be associated with Fast and Furious, and he was in on the decision to go and get, what was the little 6-year-old boy that they went and returned to Cuba. The only immigrant.
Well, Janet Reno too.
No, Eric Holder was a deputy assistant.
Okay.
He was in on it.
But she was the AG.
Yeah, he was like a deputy assistant.
We let out some of it. Janet Reno, some of it, but that's not the main one. And this guy also declined to prosecute.
He was the only attorney general ever held in contempt.
Yeah, that'll give it away.
Contempt. Okay.
I know you guys got it now.
Surely Dan or Kathy has it now.
He also dropped the prosecutions of the Black Panther guys standing out in front of the Philadelphia election
Oh, I
office.
forgot about that. That was
Makes
one of the
sense.
first things that. Yes.
Eric Holder.
Eric Holder is the one that referred lifelong Republican Robert Mueller and James Comey, lifelong
Republican.
And actually, people don't know that James Comey, kind of like James Brennan, was a communist before he had a changeover
He came out
during the Reagan years.
I love how these guys are comfortable with being communists now.
Yeah. They're tight with it.
They're like, it's cool to say it.
But back to impeachment.
They got backers.
Back to impeachment
Eric Holder.
and the revealing on
AOC.
impeachment. So today was, and somebody tweeted this. I think it was Marsha Blackburn, Tennessee senator, said today was just another, it was Mueller 2.0, and because
I think even Nunes said it in the.
Okay, he might have
today.
said
He
that
said-
because we had these expectations and people have these myths that they have about Mueller, and then you have these ambassadors who are representing us in foreign policy,
Right.
and Ambassador Taylor and George Kent with his little bow tie. I mean, it was.
Some of us think it was a clip-on.
Yeah, very well could have been. But anyway, you wouldn't have been able to see this unless, 20 years ago, maybe you were like an avid watcher of C-SPAN and maybe you tuned into that. But with how things are now, somebody just sitting at work, that's at work, can be tuned in and see the great revealing of this myth of what they've created this idea of our elites, and they're not elites at all. They're a bunch of dorks.
Dorks is a kind word.
Yeah.
Next.
They're dorks.
Those
man.
dudes. Here's the thing, and I said it earlier today.
Are they gamma males?
No.
Omega?
They might. You
I
know
think
what? Secret kings. They're secret kings. They're
Yeah.
They're
I can
lying
see
below.
that,
They're
yeah.
like, I'm really the king.
Right.
It doesn't matter who's elected.
And you could tell when they
We
were,
in the State Department, we've had these long, tested trials of how we the statecraft and how we've dealt with nations of the world. I'm like, hey guys, that hasn't been working out.
right.
That's not working out well at all.
So you learn also that the whistleblower, who is Eric Sharmello, which I got suspended. Well, I didn't get suspended. I got restricted for 12 hours for mentioning, along with a lot of other Twitter followers.
Because
Even
she said Sharamella.
Yeah.
Even though his name had already been mentioned accidentally by
Schiff.
Schiff in the Congress.
Shifty.
But anyway, I got restricted and couldn't do anything for 12 hours on Twitter because I did that. And then a few days later, I got restricted for something else. But Eric Sharmella, the whistleblower.
What you got restricted for was the truth.
Yeah, they're not restricting, Ben Shapiro or
No.
David French or any of those people. They're restricting little old me. I don't even have a platform to TV. All I have is this, and they're, okay.
Yeah, you're
Better-
done with it.
Whatever.
Better shut that down.
Talk about Rush.
Can't have that.
Yeah. So anyway, the whistleblower was going to test that. The whole big thing, a month ago is the whistleblower was going to bring Trump down, and he was eager to testify, and Schiff wanted him to testify. And then the story breaks that Schiff was colluding with the whistleblower, and in like an overnight thing, it was like, well, we've got the transcript of the call. We don't really need the whistleblower because they didn't want him asking questions about his collusion with Adam Schiff, which would unravel their little narrative.
Yeah,
Today,
Adam
Schiff
Schiff would be on the point where he'd have to go onto the stand.
Well, no, Schiff today said, I don't know who the whistleblower is.
Yeah, of course he
He
did.
didn't-
Because
he
if he knew
doesn't-
who it was, he'd have to go on the stand.
He doesn't know who the whistleblower is.
He doesn't have to do
but
anything.
if somebody
No, he
mentions
had-
him,
No,
he
he
was
had.
gonna. So how would he know?
Yeah.
Like, if you don't know who it is,
If he knew beforehand,
And that's what I tweeted out.
He'd be
I
a witness.
said, why the hell can't Nunes and all these guys go ahead and say his name now? Because Schiff just said he didn't know who he is. So when you say
Because
his
Schiff
name,
does not want to be a witness because
No.
he showed him which way to go.
Yeah,
no,
well, they
but what I'm
colluded.
saying is the Republicans kind of dropped the ball because they could have said his name because he said it early on. He said, "I don't know who the whistleblower is."
I gotta get
Which
So
is
how
a
can I
lie.
How can I protect
He
him?
changed the law 2 months beforehand to put him out there. Complete lie.
No, but that's what I'm saying. He left it open. Today in the hearing, he said, "I don't know who he is." So why didn't they say who he is? Because like he said before the hearing started, if anybody
Because he does not
No,
want
listen.
to be on stand.
No, listen. If he said, if anybody on this committee says the whistleblower's name, I'm going to refer you to the. You're going to be investigated by the House committee, and you're going to be in big trouble. So how, if they say his name and he says he doesn't know his name, how can he say, "Well, you just said who he was"?
This guy beforehand ever knew where he was, knew who this guy is, put him
Oh, we know
on
that.
the right track.
We know that.
It's a debacle situation.
What we're saying is, the Republican on the committee could have said his name today. Right?
What?
He threatened, Schiff threatened the Republicans on the committee. If you say his name, there's going to be dire consequences. You're going to be investigated.
How does he know?
And so,
But he
when
knows
said-
because he
No,
knew before
you're-
2 months beforehand.
Stop.
He changed the law.
Stop. When the hearing started, somebody pulled it up. He went, "I don't know who the whistleblower is." So then I was saying, well, since he doesn't know who it is, if you say Sharmella's name, how can he then come back and say, "How dare you say his name"?
How dare you?
Because I don't
How
know his
dare
name.
How dare you?
How dare you?
How dare you?
Not to mention, do I have somewhere I can plug this in?
You can do there or here you go.
No, also, so for the whistleblower, his lawyer, Mark Zaid, interesting things popped up on him.
Let's see.
Mark
No,
Zaid,
no.
first of all, Mark Zaid
Will fit.
goes back to like Lockerbie. If you remember the Lockerbie bombing, he represented the victims in that $1 billion settlement. I'm wondering if that's when he cemented his.
Oh, that's a good one. I forgot about that.
Yeah, Lockerbie, and I know he was involved in other things, but that's the one that sticks out.
So the defendant who shall not be named is represented by Mark Zaid. This guy's already got a big payroll from what, the 80s?
Well,
This
that
is
was
Reagan.
Yeah, that was Reagan.
Reaganomics.
And I think when the settlement actually happened was in the 90s
It
or
was in the
early
late 90s.
early 2000 maybe even. But it was in the billions. It was almost $3 billion, I think. So I'm sure he earned a pretty penny. But also his tweets, or he's the one that we found his tweet where he said he had helped people get clearances that had child porn issues.
They had pedo. He said pedo.
He said pedo?
I think
I
so.
thought he said child porn
Maybe it
specifically.
was child porn.
Same,
Well,
Same thing.
same difference.
half a dozen. What would
Yeah, half a dozen, six of the other, whatever.
So that guy's interesting. We would not be able to know anything about him if we didn't have Twitter. We were able to go and dig through his old tweets, and strangely enough, he left that one up and didn't delete it, which I was kind of surprised. It wouldn't matter. We've already archived it, but it's just interesting.
You've got some more good stuff there. Let's get to it.
Yeah, so we've also got Las Vegas. We still don't know to this day what happened in Las Vegas. Stephen Paddock, his girlfriend, who
Was
went
an
to the
FBI
Philippines. She
asset.
went to the Philippines, like right after. His brother was busted for child porn.
Which is another. Why is that a commonality?
And they do a year-long investigation, and at the end of it, it's like, oh, we don't know what happened. We don't know why he did it. He acted alone. It was just Stephen Paddock. And most video cameras everywhere in Las Vegas, and we've never seen evidence that he was even there.
No.
Um,
But even with that, the New Mexico compound.
Oh, I forgot the New Mexico compound. Do y'all know about the New Mexico compound?
Yes.
Dan, do you know about the New Mexico compound? I know Kathy does.
100%.
Where they were training kids to be school shooters.
School shooters.
So I
And
can't hold
they
this down
found
here.
a kid dead. The one they were looking for. They found the kid dead.
Oh yeah, it was a young, like 10-year-old, 8-year-old.
They found his body. But then the compound got bulldozed.
Right.
No evidence
Nobody
left.
knows what happened.
The compound,
No evidence
the
left.
compound was bulldozed 2 days after the FBI found it, which means they weren't trying to look for evidence. 2 days.
You don't want to hurt Muslims' feelings.
Yeah, but that's evidence. You know,
that's
collection.
Mueller. That's a whole
No, that's
other
a big
story.
deal. That's
So Dan, this compound in New Mexico, it was run by this dude who was a son of
a Muslim.
the blind,
The cleric.
the blind
cleric.
sheikh, the cleric, who was
inspired the first
1993 World Trade Center bombing.
right.
And he had been here. He was here illegally. He was not supposed to be here. And he's in there. He's got a compound of like, I don't know, 8, several children and like 6 wives.
A couple of them dead.
And they're training them to do a mass school shooting. So this, and then I don't know if you remember this. Okay, so this blows up. They destroy the compound. The FBI does a couple days later, and the people that are involved, the adults, were actually let out of jail like a month later. And Twitter and everybody just
Erupted.
went crazy. What are you doing? Why?
Because the state wasn't going to do anything.
They let them out.
They did federal.
On a technicality. They let them out on a technicality. And then when there was this big, huge eruption, then they found a way to rearrest them all. And I haven't heard anything about it since.
Well,
No.
why would you?
Well, nor about Las Vegas.
Yeah. So
Right.
I mean,
So-
it means you're a means you're against Muslims.
Anyway, New Mexico. Nobody's even talking about that. Notre Dame burned to the ground, or not to the ground, nearly. Notre Dame burned. We have no idea what happened. Without the internet, without social
And
media.
actually, we know when that was still burning and the flames were still going, they diagnosed what was happening.
They said it's not terrorism. It's not
They
arson.
said for sure this is not it.
It was an accident that happened from, it's amazing what they can figure out in such a short amount of time.
But you know what? Our people of this day are not going to rebuild it the way it was.
Right. Yeah, I remember there was this big thing they were going to they were going to make it better. They were going to change it, and then there was an outrage about that.
Because it was going to include mosque type stuff and
opposing terrorism as well.
So
Yeah.
Right.
As long as you include Muslims, you're good.
Right. And then there's other church burnings that have happened over in Europe that nobody's covering. Beautiful churches that were built hundreds of years ago.
It's happening in South America too this last week.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that a radical Muslim
I don't
element
know.
down
I don't know
there
what
too?
it is. I saw that people were attacking a church.
Well, if you're Muslim, that's fine.
You wouldn't know that John Kerry had visited Antarctica on the eve of 2016, and I don't know if most of you guys know that Antarctica.
The election.
You and I can't go visit Antarctica except for a couple of approved places there.
Areas.
But why John Kerry would go on
election night 2016, John Kerry went to Antarctica. So what's going on down there?
Why? But a lot of people don't know that the treaty of it involves 60 countries where they've all agreed to provide military people to protect it.
Yeah.
To
And they all have zones.
if you go in a certain area,
Australia,
you'll be shot.
I think Australia, New Zealand,
There's a king.
Russia,
This-
China.
This treaty happened in the 50s, in the height of the Cold War too.
And this treaty is held. This treaty has
Antifa
held.
was responsible for the church itself. Oh, that's right.
Oh.
It was Antifa, and of course Antifa is kind of uniting with the radical elements.
Well,
of it
and
as well.
you know what, guys? Let's go back to Syria. When Trump said he was pulling out of Syria, everybody's went, "Oh my God, we're abandoning our allies." Look up. What is it? Some of those Kurds that are our allies
Oh yeah.
were training Antifa in
Right.
Syria.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, there's
It's
many
videotaped.
factions
they're
over there.
freaking-
Yep.
It's not just one. These are the Kurds.
Yeah, it's kind of
It's
complicated.
very complicated,
SFC.
like the Middle East is.
Yeah.
And then so that's just there's a whole bunch of other things I haven't mentioned that have been I can't keep track of all the.
Mm.
If you can think of anything, feel free to put it in there, Dan or Kathy, that we've skipped over that we wouldn't have known without the resources of the internet or social media. Earlier somebody on Sidney Powell's timeline tweeted something from a General Flynn video. Oh, speaking of, before I get to the General Flynn video, it's only like 57 seconds, more than enough conspiracies to go around. That's true. My brother got through to Rush Limbaugh yesterday. We've been trying to get the titans of conservatism, like the traditional leaders,
The lines.
leaders of conservatism, to recognize
To
the
turn
battle,
to turn
to
the space who the
pivot,
enemy is.
to pivot, and that's proving to be a little bit harder than we thought. We did a Periscope a few months back, and I think we did another Periscope, and then we did
an
an
open
article
letter to Rush Limbaugh. We sent it to him.
on my on our blog redpillsendle.com. We've got an article titled "Pivot," which is about that. It's a little bit longer than I'd like it to be, but it's I couldn't get everything I wanted to get in there without it being as long as it was.
It could be shorter.
But we want these people to stop. Like, we are the media. Rush Limbaugh doesn't think that he would live to see the end of mainstream media.
But he has.
And in his time, and yet he has the ability to put the final nail in their coffin. And so we had hoped that, the titans of conservatism won't mention social media influencers by name. There was a list that Tom Fitton came out with that who was it that was monitoring them? I think it was the ambassador Yovanovitch.
The ambassador that they were all so worried about today.
And there was like 12 names, and Jack Posobiec was at the top of it, and Rush Limbaugh listed every single name except for the one at the top. Except for Jack Posobiec. And then people on Fox, of course. I can understand the people on Fox because that's their competition. But other people wouldn't name him, and so I just looked at it as an oversight. But after talking to he called Rush Limbaugh yesterday to talk to him. Anyway, we want Rush Limbaugh and others to pivot away from covering mainstream media because they're fake news and nobody watches them, to covering new media influencers. And the vibe that I got from the call yesterday was Rush doesn't like everyone having a microphone and being able to influence. The phone call, Lou was trying to tell him that, back in the days of the revolution, the pamphleteers were a big part of motivating people, enlightening people, and just lighting that brush fire of freedom.
The pamphleteers during the Revolutionary War kept us united. They kept us
motivated. United.
They were very crucial, because what Benjamin Rush wrote to Nathaniel Greene and said, in this state of affairs in South Carolina, a newspaper is worth 2 regiments.
Right.
And back then, 2 regiments is a big deal.
So if a newspaper is worth 2 regiments, then what is one Twitter account that can reach tens of thousands of people?
Hundreds of thousands.
How many regiments is that? Because, this battlefield, people have got to think of war differently now, because the battlefield is right in front of you.
Oh my God.
And we're in a battle of information, and we were hoping to change Rush's mind on Twitter, because Rush doesn't like Twitter.
Here's the deal. I got through last Thursday.
He's strong.
And certainly said, he came back on. I was on hold for like 2 hours. He said, "Man,
he's strong.
We're about to be out of time, but you know what? I've always wanted someone to bring this to Rush, but nobody ever has." And I said, "Man, I'm glad I got through." He said, "I'm going to call you back." Well, he never called me back. We come around Monday, because Rush was off on Friday. Come around Monday, and I went, you know what? And I was at work.
Right. Busy. This
This day was crazy. Never busy on Monday. I started, you know what, I'm going to call. I had my Bluetooth stuff in my head, and I was like, I'm going to do it anyway. And I was back and forth. I had to go out on the floor and talk to customers about some stuff.
Yeah.
That I never have to on Monday because we're always so slow. And then it didn't happen on Monday either. It just, we ran out of time. Started came back on and said, man, we're out of time again, but I'm going to try to call you again tomorrow. He took my number again. He took my number both times. So the next day, I'm off. I'm here. I went, you know what? I'm not waiting. I'm going to call again. And I got through again. I got through 3 days in a row. Rushing the ball. And Cerny goes, man, you're getting through. And he goes, so he refreshed himself. He goes, so you hear Rush Limbaugh. He talks about that it's a cesspool. Twitter's a cesspool, and you want to give him another side to it. I said, yes, sir. That's what I want to do. So okay, I was the first caller. He said, okay. And he came back on right before. He said, all right, Lewis, you're gonna be the first caller. And I came on. Then I said my bit.
Yeah,
and then Rush Limbaugh put up a straw man of something I didn't say, and argued against that. And I'm like,
he totally missed the point.
Most disappointing
He totally
part.
missed the point while saying, I totally get it. I totally get it. When he totally doesn't. He came on and said, I get it. Everybody wants a microphone. They want to reach people beyond their family. And I'm thinking, yeah, you do too. Why wouldn't we want to reach more people than our family?
And I'm like, Cerny was like, you're getting through, man. Yeah. And he kept taking my number down. 2 days in a row, took my number down. He never called me. I got through.
Right.
I was determined to get through. So I said my piece, and then Rush Limbaugh said, oh, so what you're saying.
He does what the.
And I'm like,
he does what the.
Are you freaking kidding me?
You know what he did?
Follow the narrative.
He did what in Jordan Peterson in that interview with that lady interviewer where she said, so what you're saying is, and they proceeded to say something totally he wasn't saying.
Let's play it. Got it.
All right, go ahead.
I'm glad you called. Hello, sir. Oh, thank you, Rush. I've been listening to you since 1990. So I want to get right to the point. I wanted to always give you a different perspective on Twitter from what your take usually is. And a couple of great examples. So, and you have it right as far as it is a cesspool. There is a cesspool side to Twitter, but there's a really, I believe, a good part. And I liken what's happening on the conservative side of Twitter to the pamphleteers during the Revolutionary War, who were so crucial during that war with the communication and keeping the rebels kind of together during some pretty dark times. And then with a couple of great examples is what happened to the what they tried to do to the Covington Catholic boys. And we saw over that weekend how that started to get blown up. And then another one you actually mentioned too was Polish Patriot saw something questionable in a video that ABC did last month. And it turned out that they were doing a story on the supposed attacks on the Kurds in Syria, but it was actually Kentucky gun range footage. Well, I don't know. Twitter, I'm sorry, there's a lot of us who get encouragement from each other. There's a lot of us that we're connected. I understand totally.
All right, hang on. So Rush understands totally. He understands.
All right.
I just gave 2 examples of Twitter blowing up drive-by media.
Saving those Covington Catholic boys and blowing ABC News out of the water for their fake news.
And I don't say anything about me.
At all.
Being, I want to be heard. So here's what Rush finished with.
Believe me, everybody wants a microphone. Everybody wants to be able to reach more. No. Everybody wants to be able to reach more than the family. And so Twitter, you think that you've got the ability to influence people and so forth. And within a specific universe of Twitter, you do. I don't deny that. But let me ask you one question.
One question
Why is Antonio Brown not playing in the National Football League?
There we go.
The answer is
that's
if Antonio Brown didn't have access to Twitter, he would still be playing in the National Football League. Twitter has destroyed or enabled more self-destruction. Twitter is one of the greatest damaging influence that's ever happened to modern-day journalism, which may be a good thing in the long run, but for now, it's a pain.
bullshit.
It's a pain in the butt to deal with.
the interesting thing, he said, let me just ask you one question. He wasn't asking a question because he didn't
No,
let you
it was
answer.
not.
No.
He didn't let you
Because
answer.
I was cut
It
off.
had
I
nothing
tried
to
to answer.
do. It had nothing to do with
That's what
what you were
5%
asking.
But it was very, I don't know, condescending. Okay, everyone wants a microphone. Everyone wants to reach someone outside their family members. Well, yeah, that's what the pamphleteers were able to reach beyond their family members for the first time.
Yeah, but even if that was the case, that's not what I was even saying.
I know.
I was talking about Twitter blowing up the narrative.
Blowing up fake news. And without that, the Covington Catholic boys' lives would have been ruined. ABC News fake Syrian war footage would have stuck. I don't know. Would we have kept our troops there if their narrative? Yeah. I don't know. But he totally missed the point, in which I still love Rush. You know, I've been a fan since 1991.
I'm 1990.
And still love him, but it's like all of the stuff that Rush talks about, you and I have already heard on Twitter. It used to be that he brought us information and it would be new. We had, because his researchers.
But he's still crucial in that. He's
still crucial and plays a role, but it's not like what it used to be. And he seems resentful that everyone has a microphone, and that's a problem. Which I don't think that's a problem. Nobody's perfect. That's true.
Right.
But then that brought me to General Flynn's video. There was a 57-second video, which I wish we had listened to before we called into Rush, because what General Flynn says on this video is basically what Rush is missing too on this whole
lights out
social media.
So we're gonna play this short video of Mike Flynn.
I don't know which one's.
It's on the inside of the door. Scott.
Yeah, I got it.
That we have in our media did a disservice to themselves, actually more than they did to this country. They did a disservice to themselves because they displayed an arrogance that is unprecedented. And so the American people decided to take over.
What happened? Oh, was that? No, you didn't play it from the beginning.
The end.
No, play
Army, okay, as a soldier and as a general, as a retired general, we have an army of digital soldiers. What we are now, what I call them, because this was an insurgency, folks. This was run like an insurgency. This was irregular warfare at its finest in politics. And that story will continue to be told here. But we have what we call citizen journalists. Okay? Because the journalists that we have in our media did a disservice to themselves, actually more than they did to this country. They did a disservice to themselves because they displayed an arrogance that is unprecedented. And so the American people decided to take over.
Okay.
All right.
You can turn the light back on. So he captured what I was talking about. What we were trying to get across to Rush is, digital soldiers. Okay. Everybody wants a microphone. Think of everybody with a microphone as a digital soldier fighting against the fake news narrative every day in this irregular warfare where the battlefront is no longer, some far off scene away from home. It's right here in your, right here.
Yeah. And I'm reading a book right now written by two Chinese senior colonels in the 1990s, and it's about warfare and about what the battlefield is and what the weapons are, and everything is open.
Right.
This is the way the Chinese see it. It's not contained.
Yeah.
There's not soldiers and civilians. It's not, and it actually gets to a point where you might get to a point where there's warfare and no casualties, but people succumb, and that's what's happening.
Right.
And that's when we get to the Chinese colonels think they're onto something, but the Bible actually talks about it. It's
Right.
spiritual warfare. It's happening. It's been happening for all of time. So you guys, you gotta pick. You gotta choose. You're gonna get to a point one day where you're gonna choose, or somebody's gonna choose for you. And it's not. I'm not trying to steer you any way.
Choose you this day.
Yeah.
Which master you serve.
But you're gonna have a master. And it's not. It may not come from a gun.
Yeah, it may not.
It might come
It's
through
not going to
your
come
phone.
through a traditional what we're used to seeing.
A political sphere.
Warfare has changed. It's changed, and
this is the thing: is no matter what you think about it, other people think this is warfare, and they're engaging in it.
Right.
So you have to decide. So some Chinese people in the 1990s, senior colonels, have written this long paper, and I'm still in the middle of it. It's 230 pages. I'm like on page 120, and it's freaking.
I need to read that.
And it's they give the U.S. credit where credit is due. The U.S. has been ahead on so many things for so long. We have, but we're not anymore. So it's not about your country or your party
or your brand.
Yeah.
Or, we've learned that money is not going to buy your election anymore. It's going to be how much persuasion and influence you have. And for those that have a microphone, which is everybody now, and if you have a microphone and people are tuning in, we don't have the hugest audience out there, but we have a reach. And
I would say real quick, the thing I'm reading is I got it from Rich Higgins.
Yeah.
You got to follow him on Twitter, Rich Higgins. He was in the National Security Administration under McMaster. McMaster is a douchebag.
Flynn is the one that brought.
Yeah, Flynn brought him.
McMaster got rid of him as soon as he could. But
McMaster is a douchebag. Just know that.
Yeah, totally.
And Rich Higgins has some insight on all this stuff. So everybody needs to follow him.
Definitely.
Rich Higgins.
I agree.
On Twitter.
That's about all we have. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you liked what you heard, I hope you'll share it.
We got to do our handles. We never do that.
Oh, yeah.
You do yours.
I'm at _Yvonne Burton.
And at Lewis Everett 3.
And Rush is right. We do want a microphone to reach more people, to influence and change hearts and minds. And by sharing this information, we're all fighting this battle together as digital soldiers, as General Flynn pointed out. So I hope you'll come back next month. Will be December 13th.
Yep.
Ides, and I'm sure a lot will have happened by then. God. I mean, we got impeachment going on.
Here's the thing, though, is we plan our stuff a couple weeks ahead. So, like, today's not anything to do with the hearings today. We actually didn't talk about the hearings that much, but
not much.
We touched on it.
What is the Democrats' favorite fruit?
What?
Impeachment.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you all for joining in, and we will be back December 13th, whatever day that is. So we will see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
My guys.